Hello, friends. Today we're talking about a philosophy that's very important to me, pessimism. You've probably heard of it. I got introduced to pessimism from Arthur Schopenhauer, who is kind of the pessimist. This book, when I first read it years and years ago, it really changed the way I thought about the world. And so, Schopenhauer's philosophy is very, very important to me, and I think that he gets a bad rap a lot of the time. I think oftentimes pessimism has a lot of misconceptions around it. For one, there's sort of this idea that it is inherently anti-life and anti-values, which is similar to sort of the same, misconceptions that people throw at Nietzsche's philosophy, where they just think he's like an amoralist and he doesn't care about anything. And this just couldn't be further from the truth. All that pessimism really is the recognition of our suffering, the recognition that our suffering is inescapable. And so when you really think about life, suffering is everywhere, all the time. We are constantly anxious. We are constantly unsatisfied, striving after things that we don't have. If you are a human being watching this, you can recognize this about your own life. This is just sort of the universal human experience, right? In a constant state of suffering, essentially. But what Schopenhauer recognizes is that we constantly have this rejection of suffering, putting it away, saying, this is terrible, this is bad, I need to always have pleasure. But what Schopenhauer does is he recognizes that there is no escaping the suffering that we feel. We have to instead embrace it as just a part of the human condition. And without suffering, truly what Schopenhauer recognizes is that our life just becomes boring. Here, he says, just as our body would inevitably burst if the pressure of the atmosphere were removed from it, so if the pressure of want, hardship, disappointment, and the frustration of effort were removed from the lives of people, their arrogance would rise, though not to bursting point, yet to manifestations of the most unbridled folly and even madness. At all times, everyone indeed needs a certain amount of care, anxiety, pain, or trouble, just as a ship requires ballast in order to proceed on a straight and steady course. So, we are not human without suffering. We would be mad. It would not make any sense to us. Our lives are sort of defined by this anxiety and this uncertainty that we always live with. And that is very important, and it really starts to shape how you view the suffering that you endure. Because instead of, this is terrible, how has fortune, how could I be so unfortunate? This is just a part of life, and it's something that I have to understand. There's also a lot of major other things that become important once you start to recognize suffering. For one, it allows us a great deal of empathy for other people, right? We start to recognize if we are all suffering people. Schopenhauer has this line that I really like, where he says, in fact, from this point of view, it might occur to us that really the proper address between one person and another should be, instead of sir, and so on, it should be my fellow sufferer. However strange this may sound, it accords with the facts, puts the other person in the most correct light, and reminds us of that most necessary thing, tolerance, patience, forbearance, and love of one's neighbor, which everyone needs and each of us therefore owes to another. So we're all suffering together in this life. When you sort of reduce everyone down to just humans are just suffering beings, which is just true, everyone really starts to become equal. This nihilistic element, this sort of reduction of human life to sort of this meaningless thing that, is only suffering, what it also reveals to us is that we're also kind of on the same level as all of nature. The world is always just this perpetual thing that just moves along. It really has no caring. And we're just stuck in that cycle. And what this shows us is that we really need to stop attaching ourselves to these big objective things and pretending like that's what matters. Because when you, as a living human being, really all that matters is your momentary subjective experience. And Schopenhauer says this exact thing. He says, what is really essential in things, in humanity, in the world, lies permanently and enduringly in the now, firm and immovable. So just the way that we live is just this sort of fleeting existence. And so it's sort of meaningless to attach ourselves to anything outside of just our momentary experience right now as human beings. And I think that's also a very powerful thing, and that's a theme that you see in a lot of philosophies, you know, Stoicism and even Buddhism. I mean, I think those philosophies have a lot in common with pessimism, especially in that sort of recognition of suffering. And so if you're interested in that, I would not, you know, reject pessimism for any reason. At the end of the day, the last and final thing, and I think what's most important for us as political thinkers, is that what Schopenhauer recognizes is that there's really only two things that allow us to endure suffering. For one, it's art. For Schopenhauer, aesthetics, art, was how really the main way where we can escape suffering. That could mean literature, you know, movies, whatever kind of art that you enjoy. That is one of the means in which we can ascend from our lives and sort of, I won't go into like the metaphysics of it. Schopenhauer talks a lot about that sort of aesthetic stuff if you're interested in that. But I recognize this in my own life. I think without art, my life would be extremely terrible. I don't know how I would endure a life like that, you know? And so that is one of the most fundamental aspects of human of our ability to endure the suffering that we undergo. And the other thing is human relationships. We have each other. If we were alone in all of this suffering, it was just us, and we just had to endure all of this by ourselves, it would be unbearable. But suffering allows us to form close bonds with people. We unite in our suffering as individuals, and you can see this in our lives. Suffering is essential to building community and building those bonds with other people. And what this sort of gets at is that the type of world we should build, the type of world we should be aiming for, our true ideal world, is not where everyone is happy all the time, because that's not possible. The world we should build is one that focuses on the arts, the cultivation of art and of self-expression, and the cultivation of community, of being there for each other in our pain. And I think that informs a lot of my political philosophy, especially as an anarchist. And so that's a very, very profound conclusion that you come to when you start to understand pessimism. So that's pretty much my thoughts on pessimism. I really hope that that gives you a different sort of view of it. And I highly suggest that you read Schopenhauer. This is sort of a collection of some of his essays, and he is truly a beautiful, beautiful writer, and I don't think he gets enough credit for being such a good philosopher. I obviously don't agree with everything that he says. He can get quite morbid and quite, you know, negative, right? But I think that it feels like a breath of fresh air to some degree in a time where people don't really recognize suffering like they should. So that'll do it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.